advantage to him or disadvantage to not having that available based on the hours of sale? And can we restrict the hours of sale on hard liquor?
To my knowledge, we can't make that restriction.
Sorry, we cannot.
We cannot. To my knowledge. I mean, I did not contact ABC to ask that question. The form is attached there in the staff report. It tells you we're supposed to fill a portion of that out if you all make that finding. I should note, and to point out on the liability issue as I read this even now, if we fill this out in favor of granting the license, it says the declaration we're making is that we found a reason to give them the license when the law otherwise says they won't get one. That public convenience or public necessity justify granting them this license in an otherwise saturated location. So I think that may speak to our liability in terms of reducing it. Again, I'm not an attorney, and I don't specialize in this by any means, but no, I'm not aware of any. I haven't reviewed this document in exacting detail. It's like any other governmental form, but the section we fill out doesn't speak to, hey, say yes with restrictions, or doesn't imply that we have the authority to sort of to make that determination one way or another. So again, so I should also report to you all, the applicant has voiced no opposition to being denied either. They applied to us. We sent it around the horn, we called them back up. This was maybe a month and a half ago, and said, we're probably going to recommend denying this application to the council. And they said, oh, okay, they asked a few questions and then went away. And then a few weeks ago, they called us back and they said, well, corporate Fast Trip, wants to put a bow on this, so we want you to take it to council. And they said, we understand you're going to turn it down. I mean, so that's what they said. I don't think we've got a major issue here. Again, the public has got plenty of opportunities in that exact intersection to purchase distilled spirits. My recommendation is let's not complicate this. I think this is an easier one for y'all. So,
another question: do we or have we, in our permitting process with Walmart, have we allowed that same level of licensing to apply to Walmart?
Yes,
and they will be selling hard spirits 24/7.
Not 24/7. I don't.
Or whatever the
yeah, during their normal business hours. The same way that, I mean, functionally Walmart's like Albertsons or Safeway, where they sell, when they're open, they sell still. Rite Aid's the same way.
And do we know for a fact whether or not Walmart will be open 24 hours a day?
I don't believe they will be. I think they.
The only reason I'm asking is if
yeah, so
it's right there, and if we allow one and disallow the other, then
again,
have another problem.
My gut here is we don't have a liability problem coming. That's just my gut reaction, but no, I don't know off the top of my head what Walmart's expected business hours are.
Go ahead.
Cliff Swazzle, Golden Hills. You can only sell liquor at 2 o'clock, and then you got to shut it off. So there's no 24 hours.
But Fast Food's open 24 hours, so.
But you have to stop selling liquor, and usually 15 minutes too.
Yeah, I agree, but to the chief's point from the conversation we had, they're still sitting on that shelf 12 feet from the door. Not like in a business like yours, but in a Fast Trip, there's still that nuisance for potential crime that somebody runs in at 3 in the morning, grabs a bottle off the shelf, and hustles back out the door. So
they did that?
Most liquor is hard liquor. The still is behind the counter.
Okay. Well,
just like Tehachapi liquor, and so does the other big liquor places. Every liquor is behind it.
okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll just relay an incident I had a few months back in Lancaster at the CVS pharmacy. Got a prescription, and I was getting something at the counter at the front, and a couple young men ran into the door, and the liquor was behind the counter. They jumped up on the counter and grabbed as the biggest bottles they could get in their arms, and were tackled at the front door, and I'm just standing watching the show. So it could happen if it's that many feet from the door, and you've got limited security at an intersection like that, and you're close to the freeway. And if it's not a dire thing that we have to do this, convenience, or what was the other word?
Again, you guys would be making a finding that the public's convenience or the public needs this. So that would be my argument to you about whether you need. Don't think about the liability issues. I mean, you should. That's what this, but my recommendation is this is a simple decision for you all. Is the public convenience served by this, or does the public need this? And if the answer is no, then that's my recommendation.
I think the answer is no, and I would make a motion on staff's recommendation to deny.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show that it was a 4-0 vote, yes to deny.
Okay.
Number 9.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Waitings and Council. The second item I have for you tonight is the Urban Greening Grant Program. So as way of background, in September of 2016, SB 859 was created to grant the California Natural Resources Agency power to create the Urban Greening Program. And it's funded by greenhouse gas reduction funds to support the development of green infrastructure in order to target greenhouse gas reductions or emission reductions and provide multiple benefits. In 2017, $26 million was allocated to this fund for this specific program, and applications and the grant was tossed out to the public for consideration. As you guys might know, we tried a couple of years ago for this, and we didn't get past the first round of consideration. This year, we applied. I've learned that $180 million worth of applications were sent to the California Natural Resources Agency. The city of Tehachapi has been selected into a smaller group of about $35 million worth of projects. They have to make a further selection downward, but that's their initial notification to us that we've made the first cut, so that's good news. Part of that process in the second step here is to formally come to the council. All the applications that made it to that smaller round are required to come to the city council for consideration in their respective locations. So the project that we put forward for consideration of the state that they're interested in funding is about a $900,000 grant for the installation of about 475 trees throughout the city of Tehachapi. The 4 primary locations that were identified by staff were the Curry Street median from Pinion to Highline, which I know has been a subject of great interest from the city. The second location is Valley Boulevard from Curry Street to about Kelton Mill, not Kelton. Well, to Mountain View, let's just say that for ease of understanding, particularly adjacent to the new bike path that was constructed and adjacent to the apartment houses that are there in that area where we created some additional width, and we initially installed just bark mulch to keep weeds down and to keep it clean looking, but the intent would be to put trees in that location. On Tehachapi Boulevard, alongside the new bike path from Hayes to Stuber, we have a median area, and the concept would be able to put in a whole tree-lined street down through that area. And then the last location is Antelope Run itself, from close to Highline all the way down to Tehachapi Boulevard, installing new trees and irrigation through that area to make that bike path a real amenity. So that's the project. In its nature, it is 100% grant funding if we receive the project. So if we move forward, we would be able to, hopefully if we got our estimates correct, install the whole project. But we had a meeting with them. They seem to be flexible in understanding the realities of getting a project moving forward. And so tonight, though, what I need from you all is that you adopt a resolution authorizing the filing of the application for the Urban Greening Grant Program, funding and stating the assurances to complete the project. So in essence, they don't want to consider our project any further unless they know that you all intend to let us execute that project when we get to that place. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Michael Gersten. I'd like to start. I'd like some clarification. Is the intent and goal of this project to act as a basically carbon removal feature, and with the idea being that trees will be used to remove the carbon out of the air, or is it something else?
That's one of the features. The concept is that they favor the projects with multiple benefits. That is one of the principal benefits they're interested in. They're also interested in the heat sink effect that as we pave paradise, the reality is towns, as they get bigger and they have more air conditions, they get hotter. And so the more trees you plant can counteract that. So they're interested, for instance, on Valley Boulevard, the trees being adjacent to homes. And those trees would ultimately grow up and shade those structures and help to reduce that heating effect. They are also interested in stormwater capture. So we've included in the project some concepts where we're taking stormwater off the roads and we're routing them into flower bed areas before then sending them maybe into Antelope Run and down the creek. So we're trying to sequester groundwater or rainwater at the same time and get it back into the basin. So multiple benefits is the nature of the project. Those are the key ones that we included in our narrative and in the intent of the project. But yes, the primary one is greenhouse gas reduction.
Okay, just speaking to that effect, I know that there are some artificial man-made devices that basically look like artificial trees that are about 100 times more effective at removing greenhouse gases, specifically removing carbon dioxide from the air than an actual tree is. It doesn't have the effect of giving off oxygen or giving off water the way that a tree does. But if the goal is carbon removal, they're more effective than actual natural trees are. So maybe consider some of those as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience?
Susan Forrester, citizen of Tehachapi. If council approves this, go forward for the grant, are the locations that you have chosen set in stone, or can they be discussed at a later date if approved tonight?
The answer to that question is no. That they've moved us to this step based upon the locations that we propose. There is flexibility within the boundaries of the area that we have. So like where on Antelope Run we might put trees is within some control. The density of trees that we place in the individual, they seem to be very flexible in allowing us to move forward with that. Certainly on Valley Boulevard we have a lot of choices. We actually included all of Valley Boulevard from Curry to Tucker within the boundaries of what we asked for in the application. We were targeting that area on Valley because we felt like it was the most efficient way to plant trees. But so yes, there's flexibility, but only within the areas that were bounded in the original application.
My concern is shading the bike paths instead of homes.
Okay.
So that the bike paths are from Snyder to Stuber are going to be shaded, and yet there might be homes in the city that could use some shade.
I should clarify that we are limited to planting trees within public right-of-way. The application doesn't let us go into neighborhoods and plant trees on front yards or anything like that. So
No, I'm not saying front yards.
okay, so
Easements on streets. Irregardless, it's basically set in stone.
well, this project is this project. Yes, if the maybe my way of responding to it would be this is a reoccurring grant funding source. So if this one were successful and we receive feedback from the populace that they'd like to see us consider other locations, I'm more than happy to pursue that in the future as well. I think this is a great project for the city, obviously, but
I believe it is too.
Yeah.
I just, I think there's other places in the city other than the bike path. But
Sure.
May I ask a question of council itself? In regards to just this grant, that I'd like some information in regards to other grants. Are those grants presented in public and to the city council before there are decisions made by the planning department or whatever development services?
would you guys like?
Yes.
It depends on the grant. Each grant, I have found in my experience, has different levels of public outreach and public notification and council decision that are required prior, some prior to application, some after application. In this particular case, this one was, because they knew they were going to get so many applications, they did not make it a requirement of the grant that you get, for instance, council buy-off on the project until after that you made the big cut from 180 million to 350 or 35. For instance, though, our RSTP project grants, before I can apply, I have to include a council resolution with that grant or congestion mitigation air quality.
RSTP or?
Correct, RSTP. That's Regional Surface Transportation Program, so those are our repaved projects. Congestion mitigation air quality, that was the funding that paid for the transit center and parking lot. That one, I had to have a resolution from the council before applying. ATP, I'm required to do a pretty robust public active transportation program. Sorry, it's alphabet soup in my world.
Yeah,
I apologize. You know, active transportation, I have to do fairly extensive public participation process before applying. And we did, this last cycle, we did 4 ATP grants, and we had a couple of public meetings in which we invited just feedback on places for, you know, pedestrian paths and bike trails. So, you know, the best way to know if you're curious about that stuff is to stay linked up with either the city's Facebook page or checking our web page, or even, I think a lot of stuff goes out on our Twitter feed, doesn't it, Keith, when we have a public meeting? So, you know, those are an easy way to know if we're just, you know, we're having a public meeting to talk about what type of grant application here or here to do. So,
but in regards to this grant?
This one I wasn't required to do that, and so.
And so who made the decision of where to put
The
the
staff made
trees?
this, yeah.
A staff of?
The city, myself and my department.
You're, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Michelle Vance, city resident. Just for clarification, how much feedback did you get from the community regarding the Curry Street median?
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably a better question
Yeah.
to the council.
Yes.
I know that I've heard repeatedly, and I know that, yeah. So that's a good. You're exactly right, Michelle. I got feedback on Valley Boulevard after we installed that bike path. We received public output here, asking questions about what was going to happen with that kind of new, you know, bark area that we were creating, and the same with the bike path. I did receive that feedback as well. So that's what shaped staff's thoughts on this project. And again, we went for places that, from a right-of-way perspective, were going to be easy for us to kind of take down. And again, spots that we thought were going to also have the most impact on the beauty of the city. You know, I'm not opposed whatsoever to, you know, to downtown streets in those blocks where maybe the public doesn't come very often doing projects like that. But we picked spots: Curry, Tehachapi Boulevard, Valley, Antelope Run. Where
In Valley Boulevard, I think there's more walkers on that path than there are people on bicycles.
Sure. So that was our thought process.
Thank you. As far as how many people contacted us concerning the Curry median, if Ed Grimes were still here, he would tell you, all of them. I lived in Blair Ranch, Ed lived in Blair Ranch. Everyone who comes out of all those housing tracts has to go by that, and they hate it. So I'm all in favor of anything that will make it look better.
And that hit probably every councilman for Curry. When are they going to do something with that vacant dirt? And you make a nice median and then leave it dirt. So we all caught that one. But all of us in this room pay taxes, and we just love paying taxes, right? Not. So the taxes go to Washington, and then they go to the state, and then they tell us how we're going to spend the taxes we spend most of the time. And then there's a little bit of money that they say you can apply for a grant. So this is our money. When they say it's a grant, it's your money and my money and everybody in this room's money. So if we can get a grant passed and accepted, anytime we get a grant, and I'm in favor of it, because it's not their money, it's our money. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just have basically one concern, and that is the amount of effort that our Public Works Department, the water, you know, we're still in a drought. You know, we sort of came out a little bit, but, you know, we're hopefully going to get rain in the next couple of days. If we're planting 500 trees and other plants and structures, for no better term, in those areas, do we or have we looked at how much water and manpower and effort it's going to take? And I agree, it's great if we can get a grant that's 100% paid for, but at the same time, we're telling residents to cut back on watering, and then we turn around and do something, albeit good for the community. have we looked at that, Jay, and have we analyzed how much effort, how much resource internally it's going to take to manage an additional 500 trees plus the structure around that?
Yeah, definitely a question we spoke about. First part of it is some good news for you. The entire structure of the project, with the exception, I think, of the 25 trees we're proposing on Valley, are proposed to be watered with TCCWD ag water. That letter that you all have in front of you that I included, we received today from Tehachapi Cummings County Water District stating their, frankly, unequivocal support of this project and their agreement that we're right-sizing our water, is the term engineers use, which is, getting ag water applied to irrigation-related items and keeping potable water for people to drink. So that would not come off our water allocation. All those would be watered with TCCWD ag water, which brings the cost way down and doesn't threaten our basin either. TCCWD supplies that water to us from either aqueduct water in the years that they can get it, or return flow water, which is a complicated concept. But in short, it's not water out of our adjudicated basin. So it's not the same pool of water, unintended, that your potable use is taken out of, that we watch very closely here in the valley to make sure that we're not overdrafting the valley, not pumping too much water, etc. So that's really good news. We're not going to be putting ourselves in a position where we're drawing down water supplies that customers need. We'll be drawing water from another source. It also brings the cost down. Don and I have also spoken about the reality that when we plant these trees, we're going to have to prune these trees, we're going to have to manage these trees. When a car hits a tree, we're going to have to deal with that issue, etc. And I don't have a simple answer for you. Well, I do have a simple one. I don't have an easy one. It's general fund. At this point is the proposal that we have for maintenance. We do consider those whenever we bring in a new project, but I believe, and this even frankly started before Dawn's arrival here at the city, but Greg and I were of the opinion, in speaking with the prior public works director, that this brought so much benefit in beautification and in attractiveness and in bringing shade to facilities that people use, that our schools use, our school children use as they're taking some of these routes, that it was worth it for us to make that decision. So yeah, I would estimate that our water consumption costs for the total project will be a few $1,000s a year, and that our maintenance expenses, it's going to vary. Some years, we are choosing relatively drought-tolerant tree species. We're also trying to choose trees that are appropriate for the location, meaning ones that don't have low limbs, that don't stick out wide next to a bike path, where that means we'll have to, twice a year be out there trimming branches. So we are trying to make intelligent choices, but I estimate several $1,000s a year averaged out. Some years we'll have very little maintenance, and some years we might have a $15,000 contract, have a tree trimmer come and just kind of touch up all the trees on Tehachapi Boulevard. So anyway, that's the answer for you in terms of the maintenance issue. It's a very valid question, I think, in this situation, but staff's recommendation is, again, this is still a valid improvement to the look, feel, and nature of our community.
Yeah, I just bring that up because, it's not like planting a vegetable garden in your backyard. 500 trees,
It's a big deal.
That's a significant deal.
Sure.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Times have changed. I remember, was it back in the 60s, Phil? The early 70s, Tehachapi Cummings cut down 200 trees because it was sucking up too much water. Anyway, a couple things. The fact that staff's not required to bring this to the council, this kind of grant to the council, means absolutely nothing. We need to know about it. We'd like to know about it, and we'd like to know about it prior to the grant being submitted. I think these folks out here would like to know about it too. They might have some input, whether we take it or not, who knows. But I'd like to see every grant brought to the council in time or before it's submitted.
Bravo. Would you like a response to that? I followed the grant policy you all adopted in determining when to bring this item to you. So if you'd like to see a change to the grant policy, then perhaps the council would like to agendize that item for consideration. But that you guys passed a policy so that we as staff would know what to do. So I understand your frustration, but I guess I feel like I did what I was supposed to do in this case.
Okay, well, no, I'm not getting in the case about it.
Okay.
We'll let that be real clear. The fact is, well, I guess it struck me wrong when, you know, they didn't require us to do it. Well, it's none of their business. This is our city. It's not theirs.
Sure.
And we take care of it the way we deem fit. So, that's a great answer, and I appreciate that information, and we'll try to do that. I know there's water running down bike path in the middle of the run. Does it go all the way to the end there?
Yeah, Walmart's going to be conditioned to extend it and utilize it for their irrigation. So yeah, it gets all the way to the end.
That would be like the first for us to plant a tree with water available.
Well, the grant includes the funds for the irrigation construction as well. So TCCWD has a main on Curry in the middle of the median project. They have a couple of mains that cross Tehachapi Boulevard, one at Denison and one out at Stuber, that we can utilize for the median along Tehachapi Boulevard. Its valley is the only piece where they don't have facilities that are easily available, and that section hadn't proposed. I don't remember the exact tree count that we proposed in that area, but it's 5–10% of the total number of trees for that area. So 90% of the water will be TCCWD water.
Okay. Also, you mentioned that this could be used for stormwater runoff also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have we thought anything about doing anything at the park?
Which park?
West Park?
Yeah, actually, in the first round of urban greening grants last cycle, we applied for that ourselves, working together with the Tehachapi Valley Park and Recs Department. Applied for that. It was not a successful grant application, so we have considered that, and hearing what I'm hearing in terms of wanting some some feedback on the front end of this process and the next cycle. If that's what the council wants, I can, when we get the initial call for projects, I can bring those projects to you all, and we can. We can discuss them at that time and consider going after that. But yes, we actually did apply for that. They didn't like it the first time, so we'd have to kind of figure out a way maybe to make it more attractive to them the next time around. Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yes?
Thank you, Jim.
Barb Reynolds, Tehachapi resident, 46 years. With regard to the issue of notice and the fact that community residents don't attend some of these hearings prior to these grants being approved and the logistics of them being concluded by staff, to technically come up here and tell people and ask the question to support your position, Jay, as to whether or not notice was provided. The question becomes, was notice reasonably calculated to give notice to those residents in Tehachapi? In Tehachapi, not in Sacramento, not in some other city where there's more of a certain element in a particular area that might capture that notice. But to perfect the notice to the residents that you have in that town, if you are interested in those people like Susan Forster who came here and had some concern, if you're interested in people getting notice, it should be reasonably calculated to give them notice, not the department heads, but them notice. Thank you.
Any other comments, council? I'll entertain a motion.
I think that overall it's a real good project, and it's been well thought out, but I appreciate the comments that were made for future calls for grants that more public input is needed. So with that though, I will recommend on staff's recommendation to proceed.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Do we have to talk about, or can we talk about placement of where we're going to place these and vote on that?
I think Jay addressed that. Do you want to talk about that some more?
I'm not sure. What would you like to talk about?
Well,
I don't have.
We have four places we can put. 3, 4? 4. Are we going to divvy them up, or how's it going to work?
Yeah, there is a proposal in the project application that recommends a split. Obviously, Tehachapi Boulevard and the Antelope Run bike path receive the majority of the trees simply because of the length of them. However, this is all a grant application at this stage. You know, perhaps the best way to handle this is if we get the grant. You know, I think it's a little premature. We haven't even gotten a grant yet. So if we, to try to figure out, to try to effectively design the project at this stage. So I would rather, or I would suggest that perhaps we wait until, see if we get the grant, and then perhaps at the 50% design stage, I can bring the proposed project to the council if they'd like to, you know, look at the conceptual layout of the project and you know, receive feedback from you all at that point. But to try to discuss it now, I mean, we can if you want, but again, we don't even have a grant yet.
Well, yeah, I know that. But now we're making you do unnecessary work to go the other route because you already have something. Maybe not a full-scale deal of what we're going to put them. But if nobody likes that, well, then that works for nothing. See what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, okay. I described the locations where trees are going to go. Maybe I don't understand how much more specificity would help you, because we are limited. I mean, being plain, this is the location. Those 4 spots I picked are what's in our application. I don't have the power to dramatically change location. The concept on, maybe I'll go through it, is on Curry, is that we might install 20 to 25 trees in that median in the sections where we could plant them, and include some basic ground cover under those, not shrubs, just, you know, rock or a mix of rock and bark mulch or something to that effect to clean it up. On Valley Boulevard, the concept is, I want to say 25 to 40 trees in that area, specifically between like Mill and Kelton on the south side of the road where we have that widened section that's still public city right away. On Antelope Run, it's to spread a variety of 3 or 4 trees along the bike path. They probably will be in kind of clusters of trees every which way, but that would be a kind of a design detail. And then on Tehachapi Boulevard from Hayes to Stuber, you know, like every 50 feet, we'll put in a tree. You know, so those are the concepts. Would greater specificity help you make a decision on this?
I don't think so. It's just, well, like I said, it was kind of out of the blue for us.
Okay.
And we've got Monday in order to talk about it or discuss it, which is kind of tough, you know. So, you know, we got to digest that and try to get back to somebody by Monday. When is the grant application due?
I have to have this resolution tonight from you all. I guess I don't understand what is the concern that I'm not answering for you.
Well, it's just that we'd like more information. I can't speak for it.
Okay, can you tell me what more that I haven't just explained?
No. It just seems like we should have known about this. We should have had input to it instead of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that we care to talk about it.
Well, I mean, I'm available today. You could have called me anytime today to ask me for details. I could have emailed you a copy of the grant application. All the council members know that my email and phone is available for them. I guess, you know, this is a fairly significant effort and in our opinion, or my opinion, a very good opportunity for the city to make some enhancements to some corridors that use some enhancements. So I'm sorry that I put you in a position where you feel like you're having to make a rush decision, but I guess my best answer would be if this was a concern to you, please, you could have called me earlier today or emailed me, and I would have could have made a time to meet with you and show you the details. But
you know, Jay, let me interrupt real quick, and I'm not going to try to put words in Mr. Wallstrom's mouth, but I think in my particular case, that would have allowed me to better convey support of the project to the community, an artist rendition of the thing. Bushes, shrubs, whatever on a map showing exactly where this was going to go. I don't know if that's what Mr. Wallstrom was asking for or not, but it would have helped me. And typically you do that. You are very thorough. I mean, we've seen some of the most fantastic layouts of projects in the past, and it was a little bit, I mean, I can understand what you're saying and how you're going to place all this stuff, but this was just sort of, you know, this is a paragraph on a piece of paper and an application behind it. In that regard, I think it would have been more beneficial to the council had we had just a simple rendition of the way those medians would be put together, the way they would look, the way that structure would come together for the community. And I think the community would have accepted that a little quicker with fewer questions if that would have been provided.
So noted.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion. And you got the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. And the opposition, I'm gonna qualify the opposition. Can we get back by the next meeting?
Nope.
No.
Their deadline was today.
Well, let me tell you what, if we worked with all the deadlines that are out there,
Why didn't you call me?
because let me tell you what, there are a lot of things that go on during the day. And you as a staff member need to reach out to council
You call
members.
you all the time.
Well, my phone was on all day, Mr.
So I need to
Schlusser.
call you for something I presented
Wait a
on the council
minute,
meeting?
ladies and gentlemen. I just want to confirm the vote was 2-2, and that means that the city of Tehachapi is turning down how much, Jay?
$900,000.
$900,000
For trees,
for
and
trees.
medians, and things that you all have been wanting, I can't.
I just wanted to verify that, and if that's the case, then we're done. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment.
Yes.
Staff, I would really like to thank you for an enormous effort to get nearly $1 million for the greening of Tehachapi for trees. A few years ago, we had a grant to plant 2,500 trees in the city. We had hundreds and hundreds of people volunteer to plant those trees. And now we have tonight before us a $900,000 grant to do the same thing. It's our tax money that we're saying we're going to give it back to Sacramento and let someone else use our tax money. I don't get it, but I'm very disappointed that the city's not going to get some trees because of this vote tonight.
I would also like to point out, I've been a grant writer, and I understand, while all of us want to hear every single thing that goes on, it isn't that easy sometimes when the state, you wake up and you go, you gotta have this grant done in 10 days, and you gotta have board approval. Get busy. I'm telling you, it's not as easy as all of you think it is. But apparently this is a moot point, unless anyone wants to call for another vote, we're gonna turn down $900,000 tonight.
I should also let you know that the odds of us ever getting another CNRA grant is next to zero if we walk away from something like this. So,
All right, we need order, ma'am.
Hi, Nicole Gamblin, resident out in Oak Mills. I just want to clarify, Jay, what you guys were voting on tonight was not specific where the trees were being placed, but that we could actually go further with the grant. Okay, thank you.
Socorro, you've already spoke, sir. Socorro?
My name is Sephora Schmidt, and I live in the city. And I'm very surprised that we would again turn down money that I feel belongs to us, and for no good reason. I happen to donate to the Arbor Group. They sent me a little packet every once in a while, and they want trees. They're talking about the warming of this whole hemisphere, and we're turning into a desert. And trees have been studied. They add more than just use up water. They add much more. They cool down a city. They cool down a paved area. They're beautiful. And I see no reason why two people would turn down money that belongs to the people of Tehachapi. I just don't understand it, and I wish you would change your mind.
Thank you. Just 1 second, Mr. Sanders.
Let me just offer something here. Now, Dennis, you had and I think a legitimate concern. Ms. Forster brought up that she would have liked to have had input onto the placement. So there's still leeway as to there's 4 areas, but there's still leeway as to what areas get as many trees and there's still some input for that once the grant's received. Would you consider since that is going to be more public input, we could provide that, would you reconsider a vote to go ahead and get the grant and then consider where those trees within those 4 areas could be distributed? Would that be any way to move it forward so we don't decline the entire grant?
Bill, I'm gonna be real blunt with you and everybody in the audience. This last minute thing is turning into a bad habit. And maybe that's exactly the way it is. But, and the fact that our input is no longer needed, I'm tired of getting run over. You know, I didn't make this system. I'd sure like to see a change. And people that don't live in the city are making the choices that we should be making. That we should be shown that it's a slap in the face, and I'm getting tired of getting run over by it.
Can I maybe,
Quick.
I've made 14 years career out of the city. I will happily take the blame for failing to inform you gentlemen of this in a timely manner. You know, it has never been an intent of mine to not speak to the council about these items or not bring items to the public in an appropriate manner. So for what it's worth, I apologize if you guys feel like my department failed the city in this regard. I take full responsibility for that.
You don't have to, before you go any farther, Jay, you don't have to, because you're just a piece in the process. Well, the process is wrong.
From what I'm hearing from you guys, your primary objection and frustration is that you didn't know about this project until this moment. I could have done, to Mrs. Reynolds' point, I could have brought this to the city voluntarily on staff time at an earlier date, you know, but I would strongly ask you guys to reconsider that vote. You know, I take full responsibility for not informing you guys in a better way.
And I won't let you take full responsibility, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Obviously, we haven't been doing what we're supposed to be doing, because we're sitting back just letting you know, the bureaucracy run us. It's not right. It's just not right. And I hate to smack the citizens for that. I truly do, because I think it was probably a good project. That's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it for me.
The bureaucracy is pushed down from the state of California. Obviously, they set the rules, and you have to abide by them, or not, and not accept the money. So.
Well, I understand that, and that's fine. But you know, what we do here is what we do here.
All right, let you and then Mr. Hickey, okay? Go ahead.
I'll go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I think there was some emphasis from the audience earlier that was, you know, how do we get to the point where we've literally got 72 hours to make a decision on something that's $1 million or $1. We need to make sure going forward that not only the council, but the community knows that this is in the pipeline. And I'm going to agree with Mr. Walter. This is no failure on your part, Jay, but there's the timing of this stuff is critically important. We have to know more than 72 hours out. The community has to know more than 72 hours out on what's in the pipeline. We can rally the community behind that at some point in time prior to you coming to council and asking for our agreement. In this particular case, it didn't happen. And I think if we had better understood how the layout of this project was going to be presented, what the final form of this would look like, it would have been an easy slam dunk. But we don't know that. We know that we've got streets and we've got medians and we've got daffodils coming up on Valley Boulevard. But we don't know exactly how this project will look when it's finished.
Again, this is not the design stage. This is only.
I understand, but that goes back to what Dennis said.
You have a right to speak to that later, though.
But if we agree tonight, then we go into the design stage. We got all this, we got it out of sequence.
Well, we didn't because we're not allowed to design it yet. We just met with the state last week, and they informed us the resolution has to be passed by the city council agreeing that you want to continue to move forward. So we haven't even entered the design phase. We put the package together, the grant application package together based upon what we have learned in the past. We applied a couple years ago to TVRPD, and we didn't even make the first cut. So based upon what we've learned, what we've talked to the state employees, what they're looking for, there's certain criteria that has to be met. We can't just plant trees anywhere and everywhere. They're very constrained down. So we took those constraints, those rules, those regulations, and said, we think this is a good project for the city of Tehachapi. We met with them last week. They toured the 4 areas, and they said, you know what, you're right. Go ahead and move forward and ask your council to pass the resolution and support the grant.
They came here?
Yes.
They did.
Came to
The
Tehachapi.
next step is the design. So we don't want to spend city taxpayer dollars designing something that we might not receive. So we feel like we're going about it in the right way, being very responsible with the taxpayers' money, following the state rules.
Mr. Sandy wanted to make a comment. Do you still want to make a comment, Mr. Sandy?
My name is George Sandy, and I've been a resident for about 25 years. I think I've witnessed a shameful performance by certain individuals on the council tonight. This seems to follow a trend that is inflicting a malaise on the progress of this little city. Basically, I sense a basic distrust of the city staff and their efforts to perform their duties. I think if there was a better liaison between the council people and the city staff, a lot of this dissension and misunderstandings could be avoided. But to follow or to push this wonderful grant over the hill to some other city that's got their hand out and ready, it kind of follows a trend, because not too long ago we sent over $1 million of airport improvement funds because of the misunderstandings and opposition to the way it was going to be spent by our very capable engineering people and city staff. That money went over the hill to California City. And likewise, another nice, rich puddle of money, for the very same reason, was sent over to Bishop. And the little city of Bishop just had their hands ready, and they just trusted their airport people to put that into the right kind of pavement, no questions asked, and they got the money. So I think I've witnessed a lot of these meetings now, and I would suggest that the council people establish a closer relationship with the city staff, and even a little personal relationship, and develop some kind of a trusting symbiosis between all of you. And I think this city could just roll along and enjoy all these wonderful benefits that may accumulate, frankly, I feel like the tree program was a win-win situation. That's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless someone wants to make the motion again and reconsider it? Oh, real fast.
Michael Davey, city resident in Tehachapi. Jay, good work. I know it takes a lot to get grants. I've filed for some grants for the job that I have at work for EPA and stuff like that, and I know it's a lot of work. Can I make a recommendation to the city council? Could you guys please think about this vote again? And then we've already discussed with Jay what will happen in the future. Let's move forward. Let's don't give away $985,000. Let's make a commitment that we will not plant a tree until they come back with a design after we get the grant. But let's get the grant first before we do the design. I agree. We don't want to spend money to do something that we don't know if we're going to get. So why don't we revote it, think about it, take the $985,000, and then, Jay, we won't plant a tree, you will not plant a tree until you come back to city council and say this is what we're going to do. And if you want to draw it out, I think that's what we have to do. I don't see us giving away $985,000 that we can use for our city. I've been into this town, and that medium on Curry is terrible. And if we have a good rain, it's just going to wash away. There's no infrastructure in that ground. I think we ought to do that. That's the most important thing in the valley. If we can get free money, I think we ought to revote it, city council. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
No, you've already spoken, Mr. Bigley. I have a motion on the ground, on the floor. No.
I've not spoken on this subject. No, you gotta have a vote to make the motion.
All right. No.
I've not spoken on this subject, but you got other people speaking on it.
Oh, hurry up.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Mr. Schlosser, is this going to cost the city any money, or is this $900,000 pretty much going to cover the cost?
Well, we already spent probably about $8,000 or $9,000 at this point, but no, the intent of the project is that it's 100% grant funded.
Okay, because I'm familiar with grant money. We do a lot of this with the state, and I think it's a good project, $900,000. I think the most dangerous thing in fire, if you're fighting fire, is lost communication. That's where people get killed. And I think there's a little lost communication here. I don't think the council is against the project. I think they just want a little more communication. And when you say that you're there and your phone's there, you're the one selling this project. You're not going to get people to come into your office and buy your product if you don't sell it. It's a public relations campaign. And I think on that note, if you did inform these guys about it, let them know what's going on, it would be a slam dunk still. And I personally recommend that you guys pass this.
There needs to be a motion to retake the motion. You can't just make the motion all over again.
All right.
And it's going to pass.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we reconsider the item that was turned down.
Do I have a second?
I have a question. Mr. Schroeder, do we have to use original language, or could we add to that?
No, you can make it, first of all, you got to vote to revote, to reconsider. That's Phil's motion.
Right.
And then once you reconsider, the reconsidered motion can be whatever you want it to be, along the same lines that the subject matter. In other words, if you want to add to the motion, you can do that, or for that sort of thing. It can be whatever motion you want.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes?
So the motion on the floor is just to reconsider what had just failed. Item number 9.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to reconsider the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it was a 4-0 vote. At this time, I'll entertain a motion, and you wanted to make a change?
I want to make a change. I'd like to have on the next agenda, to where the council, whether it's required by anybody or not, that the council is informed of should we put a dollar amount on it or what? You know? And in timely fashion is what I'm looking for. In timely fashion. Sometimes you can't. I understand it, Jim. You know.
Can I make a recommendation that we revisit the grant policy? Because the auditors wanted a policy. The auditors wanted a policy for us to have in terms of how we apply for and adjudicate grants. We can modify that to include a provision that says prior to, grant applications, we shall hold at least one city council meeting in which the city council shall, receive a presentation on what staff is recommending, and then you guys can approve that. I don't have a problem with that. I doubt Hannah does either. The auditor shouldn't, because it's just even more public communication, even in situations when it's not necessary. At least we're doubling up and we're going to get the public participation we want. So maybe if I could recommend some wording along what you're saying is ask us to bring back a discussion of the grant policy, and perhaps we can add some language about including some public outreach on the front end. So,
let's make that the first motion. And then if it's passed, you go back and re-vote on the $900,000 grant. I don't want that to be a part of the motion.
So you're has the motion to put it on the next agenda?
Yes.
That's what you want to do?
No.
For the policy. You
For
want
the policy.
You're making a motion to put that policy on the next agenda item.
Well, yeah, for discussion I don't want to try to pass anything.
Oh, no, I see.
It's got to be discussion because we got a lot of broken policies here.
I'll second your motion for a future meeting, have a discussion on the grant application policy. We're not talking about item 9 at the moment.
It's been moved and seconded to language presented by staff to discuss policy at the next meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 4-0 vote. Now I'll entertain a motion for number 9 once again.
And you wanted to have some other addition to 9?
No, he wanted the policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, I'd like to add just a few words. I think we need to be very careful regarding spending money if we are assuming that we are going to get a grant. And Jay, you mentioned that we've already spent $8,000 or $9,000. We need to be very careful going forward that, and I realize sometimes you have to spend money to get money. But at the same time, if there's a case where we have a situation where a grant fails at the state level, county, wherever, if it fails, we now are out of pocket on those funds. And I know in the past we've been in that situation before. We've been out of pocket before. Sorry, Mr. Schroeder?
Every city is.
I understand that, but we have been there also, and we're talking about Tehachapi. So going forward, we just have to be very cognizant. If it looks like we are going to be required to spend money, I think I'd like to see that brought to the council. To apply for a grant, it's going to cost us X number of dollars to make that happen, to get to a point of where the application can be presented. And what it's doing is it's stopping the blindsided. And Mr. Schroeder, you're nodding your head. You don't agree?
I think you've got it backwards. You've got to you got to fill out the grant application. You got to find it first, then you got to see if you got a project, then you got to do the preliminary work, then you bring it here to see if you guys want to do it. You're going to always spend money before you get it done.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that.
And we budget for that. That's in the budget. In my budget every year is a certain amount of money for me to chase grants, to put it bluntly. And I'm, with all not wanting to sound like I'm full of hubris, but I'm pretty good at it too. bring grants to the city. So, you know, for what it's worth, I hear what you guys are saying about this grant application to get all the way to a point where I've kind of presented a project to them and gotten past, and you guys not know about it. I respect your objection to not knowing about it. That's why I apologize sincerely to you all for leaving you feeling like you haven't heard about it. But Tom's right. Like, I have to do enough homework to know that I can get the grant before I'm going to bother you guys with a, you know, hey, let's go after this one. But if that's what y'all want in the grant policy, that's the point of bringing it back. If y'all want us to go, let me do my homework, let me leave my budget in there, but I'll identify the grants, and before I press send on it, I'll bring them to you guys and go, this is what we're going to go for. You know, to make sure you guys are nodding your head and like the direction, and you can tweak my direction if you want, or tell me to stop if you hate it. So I'm okay with that, and I respect that request. So.
Is there a motion?
I've lost track.
Okay.
A motion for
So
number 9.
we have voted to reconsider item 9, so I'll make a motion for approval of the grant of $900,000, item 9, on staff's recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it's a 4-0 vote.
And Madam Mayor, I'd like to just point out something. That's the kind of discussion. It may be heated, it may not be comfortable. That's important for us to have. And we need to have that. We need to have the participation from the community, from the folks in the audience. And I think it's healthy for us to go down that path, and it's healthy to get to this conclusion.
Number 10.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members, hopefully this item will be a little easier for y'all. I'm hoping it is. I'm stressed out enough, and I don't have enough hair to keep doing this. So the Tehachapi Train Depot was reconstructed in '09 after a tragic fire. You all know that. Since that time, the exterior of the building has endured both summer and winter elements, and we budgeted this year for a repainting of the UP Depot. So staff solicited for bids for that painting contract. We opened those bids on September 26th of this year. The results of the bids are listed there in your packet. We received a good smattering. It seems that the only thing I can get bidders for these days are painting, but we got 8 bids, several of which the bottom 2 are very close to each other, which is a good sign that we got a good price for the work. We reviewed the bids received and have deemed the proposal from Premier Services to be acceptable and responsive. This is a budgeted item. The budget was $20,000 for this item, so hopefully between this and the time it'll take me to manage the contract, I expect that we can stay on budget. Therefore, my recommendation is that you award the Tehachapi Train Depot paint restoration project to Premier Services in the amount of $17,500, and that you authorize the city manager to approve any necessary change orders up to a maximum of 10% of the construction cost, or $1,750. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Any questions from the audience concerning this?
Cliff Swazzle. How long does the paint last for? I mean, how long do they guarantee the paint?
1 year. I mean, that's standard construction contracting. You get a guarantee, you get a warranty for 1 year. We try to purchase paint, though, that's high quality paint that will last a longer period of time. I mean, right, you know, this is a judgment call for a decision. It's been 10 years, more or less, since we installed it, which is a good lifespan in my estimation. It's a premier facility for the city, and so that's why we focus on keeping it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I know most people when they paint their houses 15 to, 10, 15 years. I was just curious.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Mr. Schlosser, can you tell us, does that quote include repainting the marquee board on the signboard that's on the east-facing roof line that says Tehachapi? It's got the elevation, it's in the railroad script. And
no, it does not. We consulted with Friends of Tehachapi Depot, and they're looking to keep that in its historic nature. You're talking about the one
the sign, it's the signboard for the station.
Yep.
And I think that was actually repainted and may not be original any longer. I think the original went up in the fire. But nevertheless, that signboard is as important for the folks who are in the railroading, model railroading, et cetera, the historians, as the rest of the building. And I think we should work with those folks at the museum to try to get that signboard repainted. That's an important part of that project. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Any other comments or questions?
Same color scheme?
Yes. Absolutely. That would be sacrilegious.
Okay, motion on staff's recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Based on staff's recommendation, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it was a 4-0 vote. Council member reports. We'll let you go ahead first, Mr. Hedke.
Are you sure you wouldn't want to start with Mr. Wallstrom and get the easy stuff out of the way?
How do you know it's going to be easy?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. I actually have one item before my item number 11 here on council member reports. There was a question that was presented to me regarding the music that's over the speakers. Sunday mornings, the music is playing. Do we have a set time when the music comes on, when the music goes off, and the flavor of music that is being broadcast throughout our downtown area?
We do not. We try to change the channel to the seasons or the holidays, if you will. Weekends, of course, because tourists are milling about. But if the council would like us to look at a policy on music, we can certainly do that. But we do not have a current policy at this point. It's just seasonal music. And sometimes we'll leave it off for a couple months at a time.
We do have the timing. It's set up for on at 8 a.m. and off at 10 p.m. right now. And then we do, like Mr. Garrett pointed out, we do change channel based on season. Actually, I had a request from a staff member whose office is by the speaker. He said, can you please change it from the Prime Country station? I can't hear Garth Brooks one more time. So that's the last change we made, and we went to kind of a blend channel, I don't know. So we can, it's just Sirius XM, and so we can change the channel based on that. But the time is set at 8 a.m. and I like the Prime Country station, but apparently he has to deal with it for 10 hours a day, so he wanted to change the flavor a bit, so.
And actually the person that brought it up to me wasn't as concerned with the content, but more so the timing, especially on the Sunday morning. And you know, that's sort of a Sunday morning is kind of a quiet time. I don't know if you can pull one day out of that.
We can. Our timer allows us to change the day. I think we just blanketly put it 8, but we can definitely change Sunday. We talking 10, maybe noon after church. Is that kind of the?
I think it was more of a later mid-morning type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10:30, 11 o'clock.
No problem.
Yeah, as small as that is, some people that are in the area, they don't mind the music, but it's on a Sunday morning, they like to have that peace and quiet and listen to the turkey buzzards.
They can do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And so we'll go ahead and proceed into my bigger issue that I have been asked to present at tonight's meeting. Present to the Tehachapi Valley Recreation Parks District Board of Directors a letter of recommendation in the scope and detail sufficient to represent the council's position on the need for their organization to transition from an appointed body to one elected by those in the district. As known, the Tehachapi City Council appoints 2 members of the TVRPD board, and the County Board of Supervisors appoints the remaining 3. It was conveyed by the city attorney, and thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for being very clear on that last presentation that you made at the last meeting, that once the council makes the appointment, nothing can be undertaken by the council or this body to replace a board member should the constituency not be satisfied with the board's performance. It is assumed that the county is bound by similar guidelines. With the recent placement of a $43 million bond measure on the November ballot goes the responsibility of the TVRPD board being accountable for their actions and be directly responsive to the taxpayers outside of the city limits, yet falling within their district. The council provides no representation for members of our community who fall outside the city limits while still residing in the TVRPD area. Likewise, the residents of the city have to live with the board appointment decisions made by the Board of Supervisors in Bakersfield. With the size of the proposed ballot measure, the TVRPD could become similar in financial stature to other local elected bodies, such as basically the hospital district. The concern for fiduciary responsibility associated with a non-elected board should be considered sufficient catalyst to present the matter to the electorate. It is anticipated that the TVRPD board will have the same level of desire to place their matters in front of the voters as that of the city council, which will prevent the perception of layered isolationism. This was brought to me, and actually it was brought several months ago, by individuals in the community who were concerned that the council appoints people to the board of supervisors appoints people to the TVRPD board, yet there is no, once that appointment is made, there's little to no influence that the council or the board of supervisors can make to that body. The concern was because of the size of the proposed bond measure on the ballot, my constituency has come forward and said, we would prefer to have an elected body that represents us individually rather than an appointment of you folks being the council and the board of supervisors making those decisions on who sits on that board. So I'm bringing it forward tonight with the hopes of discussion and the potential of having the city attorney draft a very simple letter, and that will be my motion at the end of our discussion, requesting that the Tehachapi Valley Recreation Parks Board take it upon themselves to at least initiate internally the process that it takes to put future board members' appointments, that they will ultimately be elections, on the ballot in front of the taxpayers. And I would like to just open that up to discussion to the council.
Discussion?
Well, I'll continue to, on my line of thought that I had last time, that we had this districting thing shoved down our throats. We really didn't want it. We were under threat of a lawsuit to do it, so we did it. And I just don't feel comfortable telling another entity that they must do this. I think it's on them to hear what we're discussing, but to try to direct them to do something, I think that's not what we're here to do. And in the spirit of cooperation, we cooperate with Parks and Rec, the Water District, the county. And I give an example, like last time when Ash Village was in dire straits on a well, we had the Water District, the county, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the city, and the residents themselves vote for a bond, and all those agencies came together to fix a problem. And I think by us telling the agency, we need you to change and do this, I think it just doesn't set well. And it can lead to a lack of cooperation in the future. And the other part of it too, they're a small agency, and their bond money may be in a large an account, but their operating budget is so small, we're going to impose on them probably $60,000 for an election. That's 2 employees, and they don't have very many employees, and that's going to be a consequence for us asking them to do something that we might not have thought about, because it's going to cost them money to have that election. There's no doubt. And I'm not sure how many employees they've got, but 2 employees less on a skeleton crew.
And just for clarification though, we sort of blended a couple of things in the last meeting. We're not necessarily talking about the districting, because we talked about the districting being applied to the Parks Department also. So that's, because you started to talk about the districting, Phil, and I want to make sure that that is not part of the discussion at this point tonight. It's purely to get the city council out of the appointment business and come back to the Tehachapi Valley Recreation and Parks District and ask them to proceed in the future with an elected board rather than us appointing those people. And again, it's, you know, you mentioned a couple of different boards. You know, we've got the hospital board, we've got the water district, you know, we've got the school district, we've got Golden Hills Communities. Those are all elected positions. When the amount of money gets high enough, and well, that's relative, but when you start having situations where there's a significant amount of money, in the eyes of the taxpayer, they are concerned at our body, rightly or wrongly so, but I'm going to lean more to the rightly side of it, us appointing somebody and not having any ability over that board, nor those people having any ability over that board to change the direction of which they are going. And that's where I think we need to come together on something. And the other thing that Mr. Schroeder very thoroughly pointed out, you know, if the Parks Board does not take it upon themselves to make that change, implement the change of appointment versus election, you know, it's 25% of the district coming together in the form of, Mr. Schroeder, correct me if I'm wrong, a petition, then that ultimately gets forced. And I think because of what the Parks Board now knows, I mean, they have a big measure on the ballot. And what they now know, I think, is the catalyst, as I said in what I read a little earlier on the agenda item, that's sufficient catalyst to have another look taken at that process.
If you would change your request to us asking them to consider versus asking or forcing them to do something, I could probably go along with it. As an initial approach, just ask them, would you consider going to elected positions?
Yeah, and let's just go back real quick. The second line, a letter of recommendation. It's just purely a recommendation. I mean, the board can do what they want to do, sure, but that is what I have presented.
Your motion is to take a position. You send a letter asking them to become elected. You're not asking them to make that decision.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Schroeder.
Well, that's not, yeah. So your position to draft the letter, you would direct me to say, and then we want you to go to an elected board.
And I'm saying at this point, let's be cordial to them and ask them to consider it versus a directive and a position like what you're stating. So just a recommendation from the city council, would you consider going to an elected form of a board? That would be, that's different than what's on your request.
Well, now that I'm reading this, I guess this could be read in two different distinctive ways. Yes, Mr. Smith, I'm okay with that, purely as a recommendation for them to internally analyze whether or not they feel, because of what they have grown to, that they consider that.
So if you would make it your motion as asking the Parks and Rec Board just to consider it, that way they would have an internal discussion, and then they would have a public meeting, and then people would be able to understand the impact of what it would mean to have an election and potentially losing employees because of the cost. But those are conversations that the public would hear at their board meetings.
That is correct. Mr. Schroeder, I see you taking notes. Do you have that sufficient to what Mr. Smith has summarized? Okay.
One minute before, did you have any comments to make regarding this?
Just that we've got no business to tell them what to do. I don't want to do that, but a recommendation. They may not know that we're the only district in the valley that has a taxing potential that is not elected. Somebody wants to tax my house, I want to be elected.
Many recreation districts in the county are appointed.
Say again?
Many recreation districts in the county are appointed. boards are appointed. You're not the only one.
I would like to add also, I was on the recreation board for 4 years. That's the first time I met Mr. Ed Grimes, because my Ed said, I know Ed Grimes, you want to be on the rec district, I'm going to take you over to his house and let you two talk, and that's what we did. And Ed made the motion that I serve on the recreation district. I want to assure you, for 4 years, there was never a time when Mr. Grimes or anyone else on this council failed to let me know what they thought was going on in the recreation district. Mr. Garrett attended every meeting and had plenty of input. So my point is only that there was never a time when I didn't know what the city wanted. That's all I want to tell you. And I also want to point out that the recreation district is 59 years old. And when I was on there in like 2004, 2005, we didn't have any money then either. And here we are 10 years later and we still can't fix anything. So that's my only point. You know, when everyone gets so excited about taxes, and I can assure you, if we make it elected, if we make it elected, there will be increases also, because we'll have to pay more for the elections, and then we'll have to make more money so that we can pay for more people. So that's my only point.
The other comment is too, over the years, the appointed board members, they have busy lives, and we've had trouble filling positions on the board. And to ask someone to run for election like we're having to do, I'm not sure I'd want to impose that on the public as well. You know, spend money to run.
Well, and Mr. Smith, I think the one point though that we all need to keep in mind, the infrastructure and the facilities are vast. I mean, it's not like we've got one park or the board has one park to deal with. And that vastness that leads itself to a maturity of that process. Mr. Schroeder?
They don't have a vast network of facilities. I represented the recreation district many years ago as their attorney. You know, they have to find every little dollar they can find to maintain what they've got, and it's not vast. It's not vast.
The square area represented is vast, but.
Well, again, if we look into the fact that this entity, being the TVRPD, has now put something on the ballot, which they have, that will influence the taxpayers going forward. The taxpayers have to have the ability to come back to an elected official with concerns with what is or is not to their liking. And that's the concern that came to me from my constituency. And I mean, we can go back and forth on this all night long, but again, if we can come to a conclusion with, I think, with what Mr. Schroeder has jotted down, we can just put a letter together with a little bit of guidance or summary, and present that to the board.
Did you have a comment, ma'am? This is the last comment, and then we're going to move on.
Hi, I'm Kim Nixon, and I'm Kim Nixon. I'm a city resident. First, is this really in the scope of what the city council should be doing? Is dictating to a different agency how they should operate? But you've made the point that the county also appoints. I think that the city council submitting a letter is premature. I think there should be a conversation that takes place between the Parks and Rec Board, the county supervisor, and a representative from the city council before you start writing letters telling somebody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. And I think that step of communication, which you have touted tonight, Mr. Hecky, is being missed.
Thank you. One more.
Barb Reynolds, Tehachapi resident, 46 years. I think the black letter of Mr. Petke's request is quite simplistic and was further expounded upon by Mr. Councilman Smith, Council Schroeder, to the effect that this is simply an inquiry, a suggestion that maybe they might want to consider going to elected positions, considering the fact that 5 unelected members of that board bypassed city council approval, bypassed county board of supervisors approval to get a $43 million bond on the ballot with no, please admonish whatever is over here that's interrupting my speech and give me additional time, thank you. The fact that that came to ballot, the fact that there are some serious issues of failure to disclose, the fact that there is $43 million in additional 100% interest to that bond, that was never disclosed, it was only accidentally disclosed. Those are very real concerns. Those are very real issues that, as voters, and particularly senior citizens, who don't get out that much, who aren't on social media, who are not that particularly well informed, and they're isolated. I've got the robocalls from Michelle Vance. I've got the robocalls on the $43 million bond. We got the glossies in the mail. And we'd love to know who spent the money for that. I suppose taxpayers did, the campaigning on that. There are some real serious issues as to why that board of 5 people that can bypass city council approval, that can bypass county board of supervisors approval, there's a very real concern as to persons that are unaccountable for $43 million should it pass, and they're making a huge effort for it to pass. Thou doth protest too loudly. In addition to that, 100% interest, that takes it to $86 million. Yes, I have some concern about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, your pleasure. Does this need a motion? Excuse me. All right.
The motion would be, let me tell you what I understand that you're going to be voting on, is to send a letter to the Recreation District asking them to consider whether or not they would like to be an elected board rather than an appointed board. I'm not going to give, unless you change the motion, I'm not going to make that a demand on you, from you to them. Just simply a request to consider it.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Schroeder, that's a good summary of what that is. And if I could also just amend that a little bit, I think we should send a copy of that to the Board of Supervisors. Yeah, and the reason being, naturally, I mean, we're two appointed members, and the Board of Supervisors is 3, in the form of the board members for the Parks Department. So I think it's a valid request to copy the county, copy the Board of Supervisors on that, so they understand that we have, in summary, made that request to the Parks Department up here for their internal evaluation. So, Mr. Smith, you have a concern with that?
I don't have a, I have a concern about, just getting into directing them to do something. And I think the comment that we should be probably having this discussion at a higher level before we go to them. If you would like to, or somebody be represented with the county and the staff member here before we do. I think we do have the cart before the horse tonight, and we have plenty of time to take this up at a later time.
But unfortunately, we don't have time. And the reason we don't have time is because that is now on the ballot. And the constituency that I represent have come to me saying that we are now faced with an issue that could potentially cost us in tax dollars. And we need the city of Tehachapi to do something in the form of allowing us a voice back to that board.
Here's my comment on that. This is a bond measure going to 100% of the voters in the Tehachapi Valley Recreation Parks District. I think we're premature up here trying to direct something that the voters have not decided on yet. The voters of this district, if they get 2/3 on a bond measure presented to them by the current board, the way it's been established right now, that will speak to whatever we're trying to do here. And I think we should wait until after the election, see how it goes. And if there's a majority, and I think there's a big majority out there that wants this, because over all the years in Tehachapi, what's the parents that you've talked to, what's their biggest complaint? There's nothing here for the kids to do. And at the meeting, I take exception to Ms. Reynolds' comment that this was done without knowledge of the Board of Supervisors, without knowledge of the council. We voted on this to support funding from the Parks and Recs earmarked monies that's for recreation from developer fees. It's not tax money, and those fees went to doing the study. And they developed their bond measure based on their studies. And at this point, I think this is up to the voters of the entire district. One vote each person, not 5 votes up here. So I'm gonna have to go against it.
Okay. Well,
I'm just respectfully.
No, that's fine, Mr. Smith. Sure.
No matter what we do tonight is not going to change anything for the November ballot. I almost feel like, gee, I want Phil to ask me to the prom, but oh darn, Dennis asked me first. Now I got to say yes. I said yes to $15,000. Well, heck, look what they did now. And I just feel kind of like we're back in junior high again. Nothing we do tonight, we can always consider this some other time. We cannot stop the November vote, not one iota tonight.
Madam Mayor, just one more comment. It's the essence of the fact that the board of the Parks Department was able to get this measure on the ballot. It's the essence of that. And their board chose to proceed with that, and they did it on their own accord, naturally. But at the same time, we as the body that appointed those people, the Board of Supervisors as a body that appointed those people from their side, the 3 individuals, when that happens, it now elevates the Parks Department to an entirely different level of organization. And that I feel justifies bringing it out to the voter, letting them have the say, and we need to allow the Parks Department to make that decision based on the catalyst that they have in front of them.
Thank you. I closed public comments on this. Thank you, Mr. Bigley. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Bigley.
Mr. Shorter, the other parks districts around the county are appointed. Do they have
Many of them are. Not all of them, but many of them are.
Do they have budgets that are?
I don't know. The one that I'm most familiar with, but well, yes, they do have budgets of their own. Shafter does, North Bakersfield.
North of the river?
I think it's North Bakersfield is the official name.
That's one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have closed public comments on this subject.
You did not close them. You said one
excuse
person,
me.
you said 2 persons.
Excuse me, Mr. Bigley, we're done.
Are you picking and choosing who gets to speak on certain subjects?
Yes. She can do that, yes.
Okay, just.
Why don't you sit down, Mr. Bigley?
But
She
for
has
the
to
record, excuse me, I'm supposed to address the council.
Mr.
But there is
Bigley.
noise off to the
Mr.
side.
Bigley, you need to sit down.
Please sit down.
So just show for the record that I'm not
I don't
allowed
want
to talk.
anything shown for the record.
It's on
I
the
want
record
you to
now.
sit
I'm not
down.
allowed to talk on this subject, but 2 other people were.
That's correct.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion, I'd like to make the motion that we proceed with a letter as noted by Mr. Schroeder, simple, and we provide that or present that to the Tehachapi Valley Recreation Parks District for their internal evaluation and discussion, and at that point they decide if they want to proceed with an action or not. And that's my motion using Mr. Schroeder's words.
There's been a motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
No.
oppose. No.
Motion fails for lack of a majority. Moving on to other comments from council members. Mr. Wallstrom, did you have anything?
No, ma'am.
Just a couple of quick items from Kern Council of Governments. We're going to get another message sign.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna pick up Mr. Marsh and Mr. Schroeder. I think we're gonna be picking up a changeable message board. Maybe not both of them, but yeah, it's tomorrow. It's like
From
for tomorrow.
From the Kern
From Kern tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was pushing for that, and we're getting that. It might be not a big deal, but every little thing we can get, and we can help out, that's what I'd like. Caltrans, Kern Council of Governments, and City of Tehachapi met last month, and they're going to meet again in October the 18th. We're getting a lot more emphasis on truck passing lanes on Highway 58. It's like I said at one of the previous meetings, it's now in a process where they're studying it. And what's interesting is District 9, which we're in, is from Bishop. And last month they came down and met here with staff, and then this month we'll be meeting again. The point is, they're coming down from Bishop, and then they go to Bakersfield. They got to come up those truck climbing areas, and they've seen firsthand and go, oh. So they're receiving firsthand visibility on this project, and if we continue to get funding from SB1, this has a shot. If that goes down, it's probably going to be a while, but it's still something I've been emphasizing for a number of years. It's still on the books. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. I have no other comments, and with that, I'm going to move the meeting, adjourn the meeting. Thank you.